Welcome to Constructive, a podcast about construction, technology, and whatever else comes up. Hope you enjoy.
We've been traveling a lot, and so I'm kind of back, hopefully, into, at least for the month, I'm mostly around. But business travel is good. It means that we're getting out and getting on site to implement things, which always is a good thing for us, for our clients. So it's pretty good.
That's awesome. Can we start with data? Because I just was noticing on your profile, you have a love for data too. And let me give a 2-second background, because since college, I've always had this weird nerdy dream that someday we're going to get to a place where there's a database of everything and we're all going to share data, and it's going to have we can own our own data, sell our data. Do you love data too? What is special about data to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, my background is all operations and analytics. That's actually what I came out of school with. And so much of, I think, my baseline, even coming into my career, was with a data background. All my first jobs were pulling data, building models, Tableau, all this sort of stuff, visualizing it as well. So yeah, I think also data nerd kind of in every way. Actually, the first job that I had in college, internship, so it's not like it was anything crazy, but I went and worked for the Boston Celtics for a little while and did draft prep for them the year that they drafted Jaylen Brown. Turned out to be a great pick.
Sounds awesome. Sounds so much fun.
Right. So much fun. But that whole job, it was all data, right? It was looking at all of the splits, all the times, all the scoring, all the everything, in order to make an informed decision about something that in general, this person is so subjective in the way that he plays, the way that he fits the team. And so for me, I think I share that data vision for the industry, for kind of us as people at large. I think the mission critical thing in construction around data is I think there's two parts. There's one, people being willing to collaborate, because they're just not most of the time, and getting over the barrier of being it's better to work together than to keep our secrets is a killer. And then the other one is just finding a way to have it be uniform and retrievable and consistent, right? It can't live in Excel on someone's hard drive, named Untitled 1, Untitled 2. It's going to be on the cloud. We need to have a way to process it. It needs to be tagged. It needs to be managed. And that's going to start at the company level, right? And most companies don't have a centralized system for even thinking about how to tag and manage a lot of that stuff. And then I think it will grow into hopefully a way for us to share it. But it's that consistency, that uniformity, and then it's just willingness to play ball that I think we got to get through hoop-wise.
I think there's so much to be said about, I guess, data security for one, but also just how people gather their data, like you said, how they store their data, name their data, organize their data, and then how we present it too. There's a lot of stages here, because I think on a construction site, we're getting to that point where a lot of data is coming in. It's being gathered. Yep. I don't know how well across the board. I think there's data that's being lost. There's data that's being gathered but stored in Excel, like you said, that isn't really useful. So I want construction companies, even the small ones, to be thinking about their data. And I wonder, maybe this is even a good transition into Roger. Is there software solutions out there that can do some of that stuff for you, that contractors who are I'm not even tech savvy, computer savvy, I want to care about my data, but I don't even know what data is. Can you give a background for some of those people who are just what is data? Why is it important to a construction company?
Yep. Well, I think this stat also, which I always think is funny, it gets shared at all the conferences, 98%, right? I think of construction data gets collected and goes unused, just never touched, which I feel like people often quote because they're like, we need to utilize this data. But to me, I also am like, you're probably just collecting a lot of useless stuff, right? And
Mm.
that's also a message to people to be like, we need to be choosy about what we care about, because you can't care about everything and get everything. And you're going to get all of the important stuff lost in the noise of the, yeah, the just useless stuff that people are recording to record. So on the data side, for a company, there are certain things you should care about. And I think any data collected is going to have two purposes, right? For a certain company, it's documentation, which we do plenty of in this industry, right? And then it's something that hopefully should drive towards outcomes. And the data that I think most important are some of those metrics, indicators, right? When I say data, it's just a specific piece of information, right? It might be a date where you ordered something. It might be a status of a delivery. It might be, a start date on an activity. All of that is data. And for the whole industry, I think the difficulty is deciding how to record that in terms of, is it in an Excel spreadsheet? Is it in Procore? Is it in ACC? Like, where am I putting it? And what am I calling it, right? Is it a schedule? Is it my submittal log? Is it my procurement log? And the difficulty is having a system, having an opinion initially at the company level about what that should be. I think we come in with a lot of companies when we show up and they're talking about procurement. This is the word that they use, right? But I'll sit down and I'll be like, okay, tell me about your procurement process. And their procurement log, it's really subcontracts, right? They're tracking their contracts, then their contracts turn to submittals, their submittals turn to materials, and it's all this like big jumbled mess. And they're like, this is our procurement tracking, right? Good and bad. But then I show up somewhere else and all they're talking about is like the long lead items. And it's like 6 long lead items in an Excel spreadsheet. But they also call that their procurement. And so there's this translation of what we call data and how we store it, that it's just, I think industry-wide is going to be a ways out, but as a company, you need to have a language around these items in order to even get to from step 1 to step 3, which is having a system, if that makes sense.
You make me kind of wonder. I mean, I think this is for sure the case, but to what extent, I'm not sure. Is there like a standardization problem in construction where every company calls everything something different and means different things with different words? Are you finding that
Yeah,
to be a big hurdle?
I think it will be a hurdle to do the data sharing someday. What I actually like, and maybe this is my segue in some way into Roger, is I do think that the two things that differentiate a company are people and process, right? We're all trying to build buildings, and so I have a management consulting background, and I know that might not be as familiar to who this is going out to, but there's a couple management consulting companies that are top of the line. It's Bain, it's BCG, it's McKinsey. They're always throwing out reports and working with companies on strategy. But there's also another 5,000 consulting companies underneath them that all do the same thing, right? But what sets a company apart is who do they actually have talent-wise, and what is their, for lack of a better word, what is their checklist, right? How have they learned to do their business so that everyone else recognizes they do it the best? I think in construction, the fragmentation in the industry, right? Like I'm a GC and I focused on wastewater versus I'm a GC and I focused on hospitals or schools or whatever. It's a positive differentiator in a lot of places. And so to some degree, we have the opinion here at Roger that too much uniformity across GCs actually is going to undercut your value. And I think people kind of throw this out, but take a look at like Katera. They came in and they're like, there's one way to do construction and we're going to we're going to do it right and be amazing. And after $2 billion worth of investment, like it's like dead, right? And I think the truth is that the differentiation is why the industry works. Like me being great at wastewater is kind of what needs to happen. And so for us, again, like for pulling the question, kind of circling around to where I want to go, I think that Roger, what we do a good job of is sitting down with our clients to say, what makes you special? Let's encode that in software. Like, let's make project management built for you doing your wastewater work in Arizona, if that's where you do your work, rather than a one-size-fits-all solution that you're buying and saying, okay, like, I'm buying Procore, I'm buying ACC, I'm buying some other project management solution. And what I'm doing when I buy that is I'm saying I'm going to run my projects the way that Procore decided that construction should be built. There's value to that, and I think it's helped the industry in a lot of ways, but I think you give up a lot in terms of what makes a company special, and that's the trade-off. So I long-winded answer to yes or no. I'm not sure if uniformity long-term is going to be the right choice.
I like that, though. The lessons that I'm taking away for contractors, number one is like specialization can be a superpower. It's a good thing to narrow in on what you're really good at and what differentiates you, but also get away from stubbornness. Be a little bit flexible. Don't be so one-way minded. And then I like that you're offering up, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like you're saying Roger is a great solution or a different solution than some of the Procores and Autodesks if you want more customization.
Yeah, like I think there's a lot of companies that we kind of serve as a supplemental tool, right? They'll pull us in for certain processes they don't feel like Procore and ACC covers. That's great. We love doing that. I think where we succeed is with companies from the ground up who are saying, we want a process that doesn't necessarily fit the Procore ACC box because we think we have something special. And we have two beliefs, right? And I think this is just actually objective. It's not even a belief. Software teaches people to do things better than anything else. And you know, this is not just a construction thing. Like if you want to quit smoking, if you want to go on a diet, if you want to do whatever, broadly proven across any industry that having an app and having something that's pushing you to do those things, nudges, all of that, going to make you better than just sitting in a meeting with other humans, which is what happens a lot of construction. You just do trainings rather than giving someone a piece of software, and that's fine. So I want to have a piece of software, and I want to have a piece of software that teaches my people the what's called this like Dave's GC way, right? Well, I want to teach them the Dave's GC way of doing work. That's, I think, where we come in to basically set up the structure for Dave's GC project management system. And that's fun for us, and it's fun for them to see that come.
It sounds like you're giving companies the ability to bake in their company values into your software a little bit.
Yeah. And I think, again, it goes back to our fundamental belief that the two things that make each company special are people and process, right? And so if I'm farming out my process to a one-size-fits-all solution, then my amount that I can actually optimize just goes to my people. Am I training them to use Procore or ACC to the max, right? But I'm kind of anchored to that. When you get to encode all of your knowledge base from your 10, 20, 50 years, maybe 200 years of being a company, right? You get to bake those lessons into something and those optimizations. Like we said, 98% of data isn't getting used in construction. And that's because you get fields, for example, in Procore, you've got like 5,000 fields that you need to fill out. And really you only want to use like 4. And for us, like we get to cut out the other 4,996 and say, here's the 4 fields that Dave's GC cares about, and they bake that in, and it's like simple, right? So that I think it's fun for us. The other nice thing, and we've talked about this, I think a little bit, is like we give each company the tools to update, improve, and optimize their initial setup on the fly forever. So if they want to add field number 5, we've trained someone at their company to say, hey, we want to add a status. We want to add a nudge. We want to add an email that goes out to this person so that they can build on their own, so that when they go from doing 10 million in business to 100 million in business, they don't need to switch softwares and change their whole setup. It's like, hey, we just need to add a couple pieces to what we already have, and it's the same system. So I don't know, that's probably more than we wanted to even talk about us, but I think we kind of backed into it with do things need to be uniform or do they need to be flexible? And I think, funny enough, our core tenet is like uniform at the company level, right? I want this company to be able to do it their way, but they need to have an opinion. It needs to be good, and it should be encoded in something that goes out.
That's great. Yeah, sorry, I just like I don't know, my dad used to say a bee in your bonnet, but I got a bee in my bonnet last night about data, and I was like, man, I bet Elijah has some awesome insights about data. So do you mind, let's go back a little bit. I want to hear a little bit about yourself. Obviously, Elijah Zenger started Roger. Give me, like, how did you end up doing that? You went to Stanford. You got a background in data. Give me all the details.
Man, construction itself is circuitous. So I'll start with like me and how I ended up at a startup, and then how I ended up in construction kind of through that wave. So I'm from Boston originally. Grew up here, love the East Coast, but I really wanted to, even from high school, I knew that I wanted to start my own business and make an impact in that way. Like I was like the kid who was finding anything to sell to people, right? I was like selling granola, I was selling this, I was making T-shirt, like whatever I could to kind of have a little business running. And was lucky enough to get into Stanford, where there's a really strong culture of entrepreneurship, right? In Silicon Valley, like venture capital is this kind of like funding structure where you have people who have money who are willing to give money to people with ideas to go and pursue them, right? Which is really cool. Obviously has allowed me to pay myself as I pursue my dreams. So I got lucky to be in that space, to be in that place, and to see how all of that worked and make connections. So in college, background in data, like you said, and operations, and this dream of starting my own companies someday. I started a consumer-focused company with a couple friends. Took it all the way through funding. So we had funded over $1 million for it. It wasn't in a field that I was passionate about. I think that's kind of where it was. So I wanted to see the process, but I wasn't ready to spend 7 years building this specific thing. So I kind of sent them on their way. They're still alive and doing wonderfully. But it was cool because I got a taste of, wow, I can make my own thing. I can get money to do this. Like I have a patent in my name, crazy enough. And it's like, not because I'm qualified. It's just because one thing led to the next thing, led to the next thing. And you start from idea and you breathe it into something that actually exists just when you have a couple people who believe. And I was like, okay, this is doable. Like I can actually get this done. That said, I went out and I worked in private equity consulting is really what it was, but management consulting with this goal of understanding what makes a company valuable on the back end. So private equity is buying companies that are successful. And so I think that insight helped me know, like, if we ever at Roger want to exit, like make money or do whatever, making money is usually good for a business. These are some things that I need to do, right? They're going to be asking me about all of this set of items. So went through those two experiences before getting into the startup world, and that helped me kind of know my benchmarks, right? How to start, how to finish. Ended up going in and running in a role called product. So heading up a product at a data analytics company, actually, in sports and healthcare. So back to being a data nerd, right? And that just showed me what it was like to run at a real startup company. Long story long, honestly. Josh and I meet up. I'm now a decent ways out of college, and he says, I've been working, Josh and a co-founder, by the way. Um, I've been working building multifamily, getting my ass kicked, as I think a lot of people do, building multifamily. Uh, I know you have this skill set around building companies, and I think there's an opportunity for us to make an impact, not only um, not only a small, not only the business scale, right? Like construction is massive. You can make money. There's money to be made. But I think for both of us, the idea was at an actual personal impact scale, right? Like you don't start a business. I don't think you succeed at starting a business just to make, like you succeed because you believe that you're doing something important, and money flows out from that faith and belief and desire to just run no matter what wall you hit. And so for us, it was an opportunity to make a massive impact. Like the built world is globally the biggest industry. And so for us, as we pursued this, between his knowledge and my desire to do something impactful, I had to pick up construction. And that was a hard first year of like handing out monsters on job sites, trying to figure out what a soffit was. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, learning the real baselines. That was kind of the beginning of Rogers. How do we support project managers? Because that was him. That was what Josh was doing. And as people being, sorry, I lose you briefly. No,
No, you're good.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
My screen froze up. So yeah, how do we support project managers and being the best they can be, and in so doing, kind of impact the industry?
That's so beautiful. And it just really lines up with why I started this podcast and why I bring people like you on, because you mentioned it earlier too, like with software being able to help people meet their goals, educate people as well. Like, I just think this is a hard industry, and I've been in other industries as well. I won't say it's the hardest one, but it beats people up and spits people out. And I think tech can really, really help. And I think people, some people are in our industry don't believe that yet, but I think we have to prove it to them. There's been a lot on LinkedIn lately. I love Tyler Campbell talking about just like when we have this influx of bad tech, we get or tech that doesn't solve a problem, we get annoyed with technology in general. I mean, that's everybody's life right now is looking at your phone like, well, I want to do this, or trying to start the TV. Like we're fighting with technology a little bit right now, but I know it can be part of the solution, especially when we have people like you that are like, I don't just want to build a product, I want to build a solution. I want to build something that solves someone's problem, and I also genuinely want to help people. And that's why I called this podcast Constructive, because I want it to build up, and I want construction to be constructive, where we're not only building buildings, but building up each other, encouraging each other, and making each other's lives better instead of fighting on the job site. And I do think also tech can solve that. So just give me your broad strokes of like, what do you think of the AEC industry as a whole? How has it changed since you've gotten involved, and what are your opinions of it?
I think the thing more than any other industry I've been in that sets that sets the way that we interact almost all with GCs and large trade partners. So, or at least mechanical or electrical plumbing for the most part. So I'm tangential to architecture, but all of my background is going to be on the construction side. What sets the group that we work with apart, I think, is the time constraint more than anything else. Other industries I've been in, people can check out a solution, they can play with it for a couple weeks, decide if they like it, learn kind of the ins and outs. Like they just have time to test stuff. And if it doesn't work, they're like, oh, okay, like that was kind of, that's not going to fit. And they move on. Construction has no time for that. Project managers don't have time. things are on schedules are too tight and people are too understaffed and owners want the Maserati and they're giving you the budget for the Corolla, right? Like there's just no way to sit for a couple weeks and play with tools to be like, is this going to make me better? And because of that, um, innovation is really hard. And the cost of implementing a software is not really the cost of the software. It's the cost of the time and the cost of the institutional change and ripping someone out of, like, everything is mission critical, and ripping them out of mission critical to like pick up a software so hard. And so I think there's like benefits and drawbacks. If you can get something right, the feedback is very fast because it immediately has to work. But it just makes innovation in the industry really hard because the cycle for improvement when you engage with a company is, and like the margin for error varies. Versus like if I make a sales tool, like a sales guy's just like just doing stuff for a week and he's like, yeah, nah, didn't like it that much and just moves on to the next one. That's not the case. So, as an industry, I think different groups are learning how to run pilots better. I honestly think that more than anything else is the solution that needs to come into the industry. Implementation, honestly, to me, is more important than the tools. If the tool itself and the people and that process of teaching them how to use it and having them use it isn't managed well, no matter what it is, even if it's awesome, groups are spending a lot of money to just slow everything down. So I always have ideas on how to do that, but that's the biggest thing for me. Innovation is extremely hard in an industry as I am crunched as construction is.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's a solution to that from the higher level too. You mentioned the owners. I would love to go preaching around to owners like, can you help share some of the risk with these builders? Because they're not given the opportunity to do any sort of research and development. And I'm not saying owners should have to pay for that, but can you give contractors a reasonable schedule and a reasonable budget? Like, and I wonder how even to get there, because people have just already, it feels like, made up their mind. Maybe you have an opinion here if you've done a renovation project on a home or something like that. Like, people just think already construction costs too much and takes too long. And I'm like, does it really though? Because do you want to build your house on your own, you know? And why do we have such like this opinion of skilled construction labor? Like, oh, is it really that hard? Is that what people are saying in the world? Is it really that hard?
Yeah, I feel like anyone who's like been out to a job site, which is very few people, and that's probably the problem more than anything else, right? It's looking and you're like, wow, there's like, thank goodness for GC in the trades, because I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, right? It is so hard. And I mean, like there's so many ideas, right? And the truth is, like, if you're an owner who's building a ton of projects and you have a partner, like a GC partner that you do a lot of work with, right? Like, you should be invested to say, hey, on this project, I want to give you a budget to try out a piece of software or a process or whatever that is that you feel like is going to make you more efficient, right? Like, and if it does, great. Not only have I covered it, but like, or profit share, or do whatever, whatever it is. Like, there's so many structures on the owner side that you could have to encourage innovation. But like you said, it also involves risk and could slow things down. And I think that's the trade-off, is like, what's an owner as a person, once you've decided you want something, you want it yesterday. And it is a short-term mindset, right? Versus the long-term, where if you say, I, as a company, I understand that we're going to build 10 buildings over the course of the next little while, right? Couple years, even 1 year, right? And if I'm willing to take a slightly slower pickup on a couple of these first ones to accelerate the back seven, that should be the choice that I make. I just think that it's really hard to be the person to make that call.
Yeah, I'm more on the owner's representative side of construction, so I have
Yeah.
backgrounds I did some labor in high school and college, and then
Yeah.
did some GC work, did some subcontractor work. I worked in the forensic world of construction management, so trying to figure out why buildings fail and who's to
Yeah.
blame and for how much money, which was a little bit depressing because I saw a bunch of projects that were just in horrible condition that fights have broken out
Yeah.
and they're in the legal system now. But in that owner's rep side that I'm at now, I'm kind of the middleman between the owner and the contractor and architect. And I wonder if you see this too. Like, I know you're kind of focused on contractors right now, but do you think maybe at the owner level, they can start adopting the tech and just giving it down to the rest of the team? Like, do you think if someday, like, an owner will say, I want Roger and I want to disseminate that down through the parties beneath me, is that a potential for solving some of those problems?
I think yes, but there's the worry, as many GCs, like I'm sure you've heard it from the GC side, the complaints of like, you guys pick something up that is well aligned to you, and by passing it down, they're like, well, this sucks for me. And we already had a process that was great, and you're hiring me to be good at my job. Why are you telling me how to do it? I think you've seen that some with Procore. Procore is great for the GC. They're still figuring it out on the trade side or even on the owner side. And the truth is that like the GC has said, hey, you got to get in my Procore, and all these trades are like, well, you're just doubling my work because we have a company policy of doing it in project managed system B that we have. And so now I'm putting everything in Procore and then I'm re-putting it into whatever we're running on the side. And now I'm just doing it twice, right? And so yes, I would like that. Or I honestly think that the best way is for you guys to have an incentive, a budget, right? You say, hey, I'm earmarking $5 to 10 grand for something cool on this project, right? It's probably a percentage of the budget or whatever, but I want you to put this toward an innovative solution. Bring me a short proposal on why it's going to make you more efficient. Like, let's see if it does. That's what I think would work best, right? Is they come to you and they say, we want to use Roger on this project. It's going to cost us $5,000, but we think it's going to make our buyout process 20% faster, which obviously is going to translate into a better project timeline for you. Now you're happy and they're happy because it's not coming out of their overhead or their contingency or whatever that might be. So it's more, I
like that.
It's about aligning incentives in some ways.
Yeah,
but it's hard.
I think it's a complicated problem. We're going to spend a while trying to figure that one out, but I'm excited that we're trying. I just think it'd be cool to have more of those things talking to each other. I think the data needs to speak to each other. And
Totally.
You mentioned something in our first conversation about like a scope gap eliminator feature. Did you want to flesh that out a little bit? I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah. We haven't talked about what we've been doing on it too much publicly. So this is fun. And I'll keep it kind of stealthy because we want to talk about it, but not too much because we feel like it's really something that is exploding at this point. We have some really good clients. It's moving really fast. There are two ways to boost profits, right? I think the improving process side is like taking your, if you're a GC, you're going from 3 to 5% or something on your fee. Great. So you're focusing on those two things. The other thing you can do is cut costs, right? At the end of the day, I think the two biggest cost centers on any project for a general contractor, but also for trades, also for owners, scope gaps and overhead, specifically estimating man hours, right? Like there is so much salary dollars going into pre-con that just comes straight out of an overhead for a general contractor. Also for trades, right? As well. It's just so much money pouring into the overhead of their business. And then scope gaps on anyone's side. You're signing contracts, you forget something out of the drawings, and that's gonna, on average, cost 1% of the overall contract fee, right? And on the owner side, you're getting hit with change orders. You're like, everyone loses when there's scope gaps because always delays. Everyone's always mad, leading to fighting. I'm sure you've seen that on the forensic side of things.
100%.
That
Yeah.
scope gaps are the death of relationships and projects both. So we were looking at that and we're saying, look, if this is the two major cost centers, we feel like we can knock both of these birds out with one stone. And what we do right now is a team that our team, basically, you send in whatever your construction drawings are for a project, 100 pages, 500 pages, 1,000 pages, whatever it might be. And we turn it around into a list of every single material that appears on those drawings with screenshots of all of them, as well as every single mean and method coming out of those drawings. And depending on the size of those drawings, 1 to 4 days. So we have this list, and normal buyout to go from drawings to contracts for a GC, 4 to 6 months, right? We can return a list with everything assigned to what we think should be the subcontractor in days, which then the PM goes through, they check all the screenshots, make sure, hey, is this going to the right person? And can have scope sheets done in order of 1 week, which we've seen. We've delivered this with our big GC, Haskell, if you guys know Haskell. And so for us, we feel like this is the most revolutionary thing we've done. Our project management system's awesome, right? Well, I love it, but from a pure ROI perspective, doing this in the way that we deliver it, which is we do all the work. You don't even have to learn the software. You don't have to pick it up. It's not like a tool. It's not like an AI tool that you get and it's going to give you like 80% of the stuff. And then you need to go back through and do all the work you're going to do anyway. Like, we run it through some of our tech, and then we have PMs on staff that actually go through and check every single thing who've got years in the industry, basically to make sure that we're delivering an outcome, if that makes sense. Like, we are actually delivering the finished thing rather than something that's half-baked. Yeah, it's really cool how basically you then say nothing gets missed, no scope gaps, because everything's assigned to somebody at least, or someone's decided not to put it in a contract at all. So
yeah, no, that's exciting. I love that. I feel like that is there. We've talked about all the biggest problems I see in our industry already. I feel like low bid, design bid build projects are a problem. We didn't really discuss that, but that just basically the idea that we're always awarding contracts to the cheapest guy is a problem too. But scope gaps are huge. I mean, I think we just don't realize how often the design drawings aren't complete, even when they might say 100%. They're most of the time they're not 100%. Mm-hmm. And then the estimator at the contractor's office it isn't always going to catch everything, and it takes a lot of experience to think through what potentially are we missing here. I think it kind of sounds like AI will help with that too. So that's where I wanted to go just in this end part is, what is AI already doing well for construction, and what should we be looking to give AI as tasks in our industry right now?
Good question. I think AI right now in construction is doing a really good job on retrieval and analysis. So when I say that, I think there are some companies that are doing pretty well for themselves that have chat bots basically with data, right? You're feeding in your own project information and you can ask questions and quickly get answers, right? I think AI is doing really well at that. I think there's Trunk Tools is one that I think people know. even document crunch on the contract side, being able to analyze, ask questions, get information back really fast. AI's performing well there. I think where AI needs to make the jump is into execution. So actually delivering an outcome rather than just regurgitating information. Um, I think the scope tool is our first jump into that, given that we're willing to put humans into the process as well, right? I think a lot of companies are not willing to do that. They just want to give a tool. We want to give a service, if that makes sense. But execution is the next step, right? Having AI perform simple tasks in the right way. Because I think there's a lot of ways that it can go wrong too, right? Like if you have an AI that is starting to nudge people all the time, like send reminders out, and you're like, oh, this is a great case for AI. But the problem is everyone's getting, right? Like it's how they ignore the Procore emails or the ACC emails or whatever else it might be. And so finding a way to have effective execution rather than just information retrieval, I think is wave 2 that's going to start coming through.
That's awesome. Do you want to talk about just like lessons you've learned joining this industry in the life of Roger? Like what was one of the hardest lessons? Do you have a story?
Ooh. I think so. I mean, one, getting to know construction, I think was some of my hardest lessons, right? Like especially getting my feet wet, like rolling up to a project site in my like white Civic, being like, hey guys, like I am on the tech side of the industry, and everyone's like, get out of here. So I think figuring that out, that was just like me thrown into the deep end in some ways. I think the other lesson that I've learned that is like very aligned in some ways into construction is that partnership's the only way to succeed, right? It's great sometimes for business to be able to just have something and have people buy it and just kind of go off and do their thing. You don't have to interact with it. Happens in other industries and can be done pretty well. I don't think you can do it in construction, and I wouldn't recommend it. I think that kind of this is through the thread of implementation is the most important part of construction tech. That outsized outcomes are created from spending time with clients in construction in a way that in other industries that might be slightly less important. And so I think my biggest lesson in construction is having come in and initially being like, oh yeah, we can just like toss software over to people and it's going to go fine. And watching that just like crash and burn and say, okay, we're like, so much about delivering value here is about taking the time to sit with our clients and strategize and spend the time with them when, like kind of we talked about, like they don't have the time themselves to be as strategic about it. They need that as part of the service.
Cool. Is it tryroger.com? Is that the website?
Yeah, that's the website. Yeah.
So, can I ask why Roger? Where did Roger come from?
Yeah. So Roger is kind of a nod to kind of the military side, right? And the kind of initially as we were moving, this is part of the people process thing, right? It was around communication together. And Roger, in the military sense, it literally means like, hey, received and understood. And so for us, it was like that we feel like is the critical link that gets dropped often in construction. It's like there's a lot of information flying around and it's not always received and it's certainly not always understood what needs to happen. And for us, a system that helped teach your people where's the information they need to receive and how to understand it and then take that next step was really important. So Roger kind of came out of that and we had a bunch of other ideas like kind of bouncing around, but that is kind of where we ended up.
I like that. I'm glad there. For some reason, I kind of liked it too, not thinking that maybe it meant nothing. You know, just we picked a random person's name and dropped the D that is sometimes in the word Roger. But That's awesome. And you're Elijah Zenger. Thanks for coming on, man. Anything else you want to plug or tell people to go check out?
No, I mean, thank you for having me. This was fun. For
We'll
letting
have a
me
season
share all
two, and
my
I'll have to get you back in like a year or something. See how much Roger has grown.
yeah, what are the changes? Do I still feel the same way? Am I happy? Am I sad? Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
that'll be good. Come back in and be like, it's all about something completely different than what I said. That'll be fun.
Sounds great. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
man. Everybody have a good one.